I would get straight up fired if I did not ask you about the recent photo from the Captain America set of you. Might we be seeing a Mr. Ford as the Red Hulk?
What is the Red Hulk?
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was everything that I expected it to be. It's an incredibly long and boring action film that tries to recapture the magic of a beloved franchise but ultimately fails to do so while destroying a beloved character's legacy by making him a sad, old, grumpy man that is constantly being overshadowed by his stronger and much more annoying female counterpart, along with a plot that makes about as much sense as a vegan eating cheese. Watching the Dial of Destiny is like going to the high school prom with your grandma or grandpa. This is a film that hardly anybody asked for, and a film that was honestly not needed at all. And while I can say that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull isn't a great movie, it's certainly a lot better than this one. And if you thought Harrison Ford was old in Crystal Skull, just wait until you see this one, because Harrison Ford is really old in this one. In fact, he's so old that he is now 30 years older than Sean Connery was when he was filming The Last Crusade. So that means Harrison Ford is now old enough to play Indy's grandpa. It also doesn't help the fact that this movie bastardizes a character that I have loved since I was 9 years old by making him a coward. Now, before I go on any further, I would like to say this. I love Indiana Jones. There's no other franchise that I love more than this one. Okay, that's actually a lie. There is one more franchise that I love more than this one. This series is my second favorite franchise of all time behind Lord of the Rings. These films are fun, adventurous, well-directed, well-paced, and I never get bored watching them. I absolutely adore all the movies in the franchise. Okay, I'm sorry, I lied again. I enjoy most of the films in the franchise. Let's be honest, I didn't really want to see another Indiana Jones film at this point. I mean, did anybody want this film? Does anybody really want to see an 80-year-old Harrison Ford try and pull off the same stunts he did 4 decades ago? Do you really want to see another Indiana Jones film just so Disney can profit off the franchise no matter how good or bad it is, even though right now it's backfiring for them? It wouldn't be as fun to see an older Indiana Jones unless people want that. I mean, the guy was old enough in Crystal Skull, but Disney being the company known for destroying and milking beloved franchises, they just couldn't help themselves, could they? Well, let's grab our fedoras and whip straight into this abysmal adventure, shall we? So the movie opens up in 1940s Germany during World War II as we see a younger version of Indiana Jones hunting for an artifact with an old friend of his. The artifact that they are looking for ends up being a fake, but Indy and his friends soon discover that the Nazis have gained another artifact known as Archimedes' Dial, an artifact that supposedly gives the ability to travel through time. While trying to retrieve that artifact, Indy and his friend escape, only getting half of the dial while the main villain gets whacked in the face and supposedly, quote-unquote, dies. And I say quote-unquote because, you know what? We'll get to that later. You know, honestly, I gotta admit, this whole opening sequence is actually pretty cool. It really does feel like a classic Indiana Jones film, and it makes me wish that the whole film was like this. This was the only part of the film that I enjoyed. Keep that in mind. The only part. I only really have 2 complaints with this opening scene. It does go on for a bit, and the de-aging on Harrison Ford looks worse than some kid making a pizza out of Play-Doh. I mean, come on, it looks absolutely terrible. His head moves really weird and it feels like it was done in a day. And apparently I'm now learning that the de-aging took the VFX artist, 3 years to work on? But 3 years? And it still looks like garbage? Come on, you guys, seriously? Why does Indy look like a Polar Express character? Anyways, we cut to present day in 1969 where we see a much older Indiana Jones bang on hippies' doors, make breakfast by himself as an old, sad, grumpy old man who is grieving over the fact that him and Marion are getting a divorce. Right, because if there's one thing that we want to see a beloved character do, it's to be a sad, old, grumpy man who had a good ending in the last film, but it's ultimately ruined by this one. Anyways, we cut to Indy teaching a class as the students seem very bored and uninterested because gone are the days where the women are gushing over his good looks. We then get to meet Helena, who is absolutely wonderful. This chick is a know-it-all and she answers every question correctly and even finishes Indy's sentences during the lecture. We're not even halfway through the film and I already hate this character. After the class is over, Indy goes out for a drink in the middle of the day, for some reason, and Helena introduces himself to Indy, but it turns out that he doesn't recognize her. She then says that she's his goddaughter and explains that she is looking for Archimedes' dial, and it also turns out that she graduated school already. So why was she in Indy's class if she knows everything? Because in this day and age, we need a quote-unquote strong female character to overshadow the quote-unquote toxic male in almost every piece of nerdy media these days. Good job, Hollywood.
It's called capitalism.
Okay, so the two of them sit down and give out some more boring exposition. Oh my gosh, there's so much exposition in this film, jeez. Anyways, yeah, they talk about Archimedes' dial some more, and Helena says she wants to find it because, she wants to be famous. And how exactly am I supposed to sympathize with her character again? Look, I get it. Indy was like that in Temple of Doom, though. But Indy has somewhat of a character arc in that film, and he's not annoying in that film, and he's not arrogant, and he actually really cares about people like Short Round and Willie. But in this film, Helena is just... Look, I need a minute. Indy then shows Helena where half of the dial is, and surprise, surprise, Helena gets hunted down because she's wanted, and she's being hunted down by the, Nazi CIA. And for some reason, this random black lady is with them? Seriously, this group just comes out of nowhere. I mean, they never really explain themselves or what they are. Like, are they the police? Are they the CIA? Why is this girl with them? Who is she? What's her motivation? And the worst part of it is she dies without any explanation whatsoever. We don't even know what her motivation is. We don't know what her character is. We don't even know why she's there. She's just there and dies. What was the point of this character then? Well, I guess that doesn't matter. Moving on. Anyways, the Nazi CIA find Helena and Indy as they make their escape. Indy gets framed for a crime he didn't commit, and he chants out during a protest because, I guess it's supposed to be a distraction or something, even though he's cuffed up and doesn't really try to blend in with the crowd. Indy escapes, he goes to the police for help, he gets on a horse, he makes his escape, and Helena ditches him. Then we finally meet Sala. Why am I not excited to see Sala? You want to know why? Because the writing is awful, and the pacing is terrible too, and the jokes are awful, and the characters are awful, and everything about this movie so far, except for that opening scene, is awful. Anyway, so he meets with Sala, there's a few flashback sequences, and Indy explains that he has to go get the dial to, clear his name. I don't know how exactly getting the dial would clear his name, but anyways, Indy is traveling to another country whose name I don't remember because this plot is so uninteresting and boring that I don't even care anymore. And he meets up with, this magical brown boy, okay, it's kind of hard to explain his character because he goes with them later on because, okay, so anyway, so we find Helena auctioning off the dial. Indy's pretty pissed about it. He goes to meet up with her. There's a few comments made about how Helena and her are related somehow. And then Indy finally meets up with that guy he hit in the face back in the 40s. Didn't he get hit in the face, supposedly dying? So, he's, fine? We saw him got whacked in the face earlier. That should have killed him. And he doesn't even have a scar or anything. It doesn't make any sense. So Indy, Helena, and the magical brown boy escape trying to retrieve the dial, but ultimately get ambushed in the process, and they have some really bad banter between each other. And why does this kid go with them? I have no freaking clue why. I guess he's supposed to be like Short Round, except the only difference is that Short Round was actually useful, and this kid isn't. He's just there and has absolutely no personality. Also, the banter between these characters is just so unpleasant and uncomfortable to watch. They have absolutely zero chemistry with each other, and it just drives me crazy, honestly. After they escape, there's more exposition about the dial given. Exposition. Jeez, there's so much exposition in this film. When exposition was given in the other Indy films, it was used as a plot device to explain the artifact that they were looking for, and it was always to the point and understandable. It never dragged on, and it never had any retcons. But in here, it's just exposition, and exposition, and exposition. What's even worse is that they retcon a lot of this information later, and it makes it even more confusing because they didn't explain this before. And moving on, Indy, Helena, and the magical kid go to the seas to find something that relates to the location of the dial in the ocean. because it supposedly reveals the location of Archimedes' tomb. There's a little comment about how the eels look like snakes, and it's supposed to be like a reference or a callback to Indy's fear of snakes, but anyway, so they go underwater, they find what they're looking for, but surprise, surprise, the Nazis find them and they get captured. But don't worry, Helena, the strong female character, is here to save the day, and not Indiana Jones, even though his name is in the title. So Helena outsmarts Indy once again by giving the Nazis a fake location and blowing up the ship that they're on. But surprise, surprise, the Nazis survive somehow, even though they should have died. And Indy, Helena, and the magical brown kid make their escape because the plot says they need to. So the Nazis figure out the real trail later on because Helena didn't think that through, I guess. Wow. Good job. And the three main characters are going to this location whose name I currently do not remember because the movie is so darn forgettable. Alright, so Indy, Helena, and the kid make their way to a new location because that's supposedly where Archimedes' grave is, and they try to find it. The kid gets captured, but Indy's like, nah, he'll be fine. And him and Helena go to find the remains of the dial. Then we get a stupid scene of Indy doing, this. Alright, so Indy and Helena find the other half of the dial, but surprise, surprise, the Nazis are there too, and their plan is to use the dial to travel back to World War II so that Germany wins the war, and they're planning on doing that by killing Hitler. Because that's what Nazis are all about, right? So then there's this big fight that happens, Indy gets shot, and then is on the verge of death, and then gets captured, and it turns out Helena has to be the one to save him. You know, it's usually the other way around with Indy trying to save the girl, but I guess Disney's gotta bastardize another beloved character by making the strong female character be the hero because that's their agenda! Also, if Indy is dying, then dang, he's surviving for a really long time in the final act. So as Indy gets captured, the Nazis use the dial to travel back to World War II, but the dial sends them 2,000 years in the past. The magical brown boy hijacks a plane, follows them, and destroys the plane that the Nazis are in, and him and Helena escape, and we get one of the stupidest endings in cinematic history. They meet up with Archimedes, and then they find out that the dial is not actually a time travel device, but a portal that sends you to one point in time. Jeez, even the ending has exposition? Anyways, Indy is on the verge of death and just wants to die because he believes that there's nothing for him back in the 60s. Helena tries to convince him, but ends up punching him in the face. Indy wakes up back in his apartment in New York, and then we find Helena checking in on him to see how he's doing. How do you think he's doing? You punched him in the face! And the movie ends with Indy reuniting with Marion, Sala coming home to get Helena and the boy to go on another adventure, I guess. We get a kind of touching recreation of the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where Marion and Indy are saying like, oh, where does it hurt? Like that scene from the boat. And yeah, it's a nice callback and anything, but I don't know. It just, in here, it doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel like something that like I should be caring about, you know? And the movie ends with Indy grabbing his hat from the balcony because he's not done, I guess. I'm done with the plot summary. That was painful. I only have 2 pros for this film. I appreciate the fact that they were using practical effects for this film, and they actually don't look that bad. This is a pretty visually pleasing film. It's not as stylistic or as beautiful as the other films, but it certainly looks better than most Marvel movies being made, and I do appreciate that. And the lack of CGI, I gotta say, not bad. The only thing that sucks is the de-aging on Harrison Ford's face. Like, the way he moves looks just so weird and just so off, and it just it doesn't look great. Wait, I'm supposed to be talking about pros. What am I doing? Oh yeah. I like the opening scene. Yeah. Anyways, moving on to the cons. This movie is too long and the plot makes 0 sense. There is too much exposition, and when they are trying to explain the dial, it just leaves me with even more questions and it makes me even more confused. Somehow the idea of the dial just opening a portal to a different time period is somehow even worse than the alien plot. I mean, Crystal Skull wasn't a great film, but that plot makes more sense than this one. I really hate saying that, but it's the truth. I really didn't think that it would be any worse than Aliens somehow, but they did it! They did it! There's too many plot holes. So Indy, doesn't retrieve the dial at the end of the film. Wasn't there that whole thing about him being framed for killing somebody? So does he still get cleared for that? The movie just ends with him and Marion just doing some, taxes, and that's it. No clearing of Indiana Jones's name, none of that is explained. It's just back to square one again, and that's all that happens. None of the characters are interesting and are just unpleasant to watch. This black lady from the CIA is just there for no reason and gets killed, like I said before. The villain, I don't remember his name. He's that boring. He just wasn't interesting or intimidating at all. I was just dreading him while he was on screen. Look, think about all the other indie villains. You got Belloc, you got Mola Ram, you got that guy from The Last Crusade. Oh yeah, and you even got Cate Blanchett's character from Crystal Skull. She's much more interesting than this guy. Compare those guys with this one. Every time he's on screen, I never get the sense that he's like this big threat or trying to commit horrible acts of evil. He just wants the dial to be in power, I guess. But I don't know, I just don't find his character that threatening or to be that believable or have a motivation that is like, I don't know, interesting. This random kid that tags along with Indy and Helena is literally useless. The only thing that he does is hijack a plane at the end of the film, but that has no effect on the plot whatsoever. Then we get Helena. She's annoying, arrogant, and selfish. She is the absolute definition of Mary Sue. This character is so unlikable and it's just not fun to watch at all. Her motivation is to get the dial, become famous, make a ton of money. Look, Indy was like that in Temple of Doom, but he has a character arc in that film. But in here, Helena hardly goes through any change at all. I feel that she is still the same character as she was at the beginning of the film, all the way to the ending. I could go on and on about this character, but all I can say right now is that she sucks. Sala is just there. Yeah, he doesn't do much. He's just there for fan service, but... And Indy himself. Oh boy. Wow. Just wow. Oh jolly gee. They made Indiana Jones a sad old man who is a coward and has to wait for his younger counterparts to do all the work for him. Yep, that's the best summary of his character. Poor Indy. I love this guy, and Disney ruined him. Look, I get that in the original trilogy, Indy made mistakes and he wasn't perfect, but he was still like cool, he was still heroic, and he was still willing to get the job done. And I get that Harrison Ford is much older than he was like 40 years ago, and he's not able to pull off the same stunts, and he's not going to be as able-bodied as he used to be, but that's the problem though. Like, I just don't see Indy as being like this old, cowardly guy, you know? It just doesn't work for his character that way. I mean, yeah, he was pretty old in Crystal Skull, but he was still able to move and stuff. But honestly, I think they should have just stopped there. Why make another Indy film at this point? Harrison Ford is just way too old for this. I mean, sure, he looks good for his age, and I'm sure he's down for it, but still, it's just not as fun. Something about the action scenes feel off in this film. I don't know if it's just me, but they just feel mean-spirited, and they lack the fun and energy of the original films. It doesn't really feel like an Indiana Jones film to me. It just feels like some random action film and not a good one. So at the end of the day, I personally did not have a good time watching Dial of Destiny. It's boring, dull, too uninteresting for me to care, and it destroys the legacy of a beloved character while adding new additions who are very insufferable and very annoying and very unlikable. I'll just keep watching the original 3 films until the day I die, because in a perfect world, like how there is only one God, there are only 3 indie films: Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade. Heck, I might even rewatch Crystal Skull because that movie, in my opinion, is much better than this one. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is better than Dial of Destiny. If you are a diehard fan of the franchise like I am, avoid this film at all costs, because believe me, this movie fails to recapture the magic of Indiana Jones. If you think you're gonna get a fun film, keep your expectations low and wait until this movie comes out on streaming so you can pirate it. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny an insufferable 4 out of 10.